Good day to you. I'm taking my walk, as you've seen me do for a few classes this semester. It's my walk. It's not anybody else's walk in this class. You all have your own routines. For my routine, I'm walking right now. Probably some car is going to go by. I don't know, it's a little bit cold today, but maybe with their windows open, I'll hear some music. I'll be running into campus soon. I'll start to run into media on people's sweatshirts. Later on, I'm going to be on the web. Probably be on the web a lot today. I normally am. It's part of my job. I'll be exposed to whatever I'm exposed to and wherever I take myself on the web. At some point, I'm going to hear some radio because I need to jump in the car and take a ride today to run some errands. So I'll be listening to radio. Later on tonight, I'm going to be all over the impeachment hearings, watching a lot of television, seeing what's going on there. And all throughout the day, I'll be checking my phone. I'll be checking my phone and my social media, my Twitter, etc. That's my life. And that life is going to surround me with certain media choices, certain media temptations, certain media access. And your lives are all the same. You have your own individual lives. You run into regular media on a daily basis, and then there's irregular media that you run into. Media that you don't run into all the time is when you stay over a friend's house and you happen to watch a horror film, even though you don't usually watch horror films. So as we arrive at our final RSC post today, we're going to be trying to combine everything that we've studied in this class so far into what makes us a person. Not collectively, but what makes you a person. What kind of person are you specifically by virtue of the media that you access? And how do you differ as a person from other people around the world who access different kinds of media? They access different media content, and they access media differently from you. So let's move into some dimensions that start to uncover the bigger story here behind the media content that we're exposed to, and ultimately how we're influenced in some ways without our own doing as human beings by virtue of the media that we're accessing. Let's start first of all with the philosophies. Remember when we studied philosophies, we talked about how countries generally fit into philosophies, and we can make some general statements now about philosophies that in general, if you have a libertarian philosophy like the United States does, it's going to be open to all-out capitalism, all-out private profit-making media, where almost all media content is considered to be a product. It's a product that's to be packaged and sold. And the worth of the product, okay, it's great if it's very worthy, if it's a documentary that just happens to be a hit, super. But really that's of secondary concern. You can have a show like Ridiculousness, nothing wrong with Ridiculousness, but that's a show that is not exactly raising people's levels of awareness or raising their levels of vocabulary or causing them to develop more sophisticated arguments. Not that media content should do that. It's just an example of a show that, in making fun of others and showing people getting into silly mishaps, it's media content that may satisfy a lot of people, but it's not necessarily doing things for people in productive ways. It's a product. It's a product that people are willing to purchase. You can see that by how many people watch the show. So if you have media systems that grow up in a libertarian philosophy, you're often going to have rampant capitalism and media conceptualized as products. Versus if you have a philosophy that is more inclined towards social responsibility philosophy, in some cases communist philosophy, you have media that has a different kind of purpose to it, that there is supposed to be a sector of the media, a strong sector, that is public service media, that is funded by means other than advertising. It could be government, it could be a license fee, it could be a trust that's set up, but basically it allows media producers to produce content that is not always subjected to the values and the strategies of out-and-out capitalism. And so in those countries, those social responsibility countries, you see a lot less entertainment, pop culture, kind of mindless programming on TV. Same with radio, you see less top 40 radio. Same with magazines, you see more specialized magazines in areas of art, entertainment, culture. In these kinds of countries, China included, media often has a charter to elevate the public tastes. And so that means that even in other kinds of programming, aside from opera, aside from documentaries, aside from ballet, aside from gymnastics, aside from ice skating, aside from author interviews, aside from scientific explanations, aside from all that, you also just have the media that's in the game of young people's interests as well. That is to say that the BBC or France 2, which is a TV station in France, or in Sweden, one of the P radio stations are all labeled with P's, they actually have pop music stations. They want to be in the game along with private media, which has strictly your interests. The only interest that the private media have is to make money off of you, versus the other system, which is not always necessarily completely benign. I mean, communism is not benign. I'm not trying to say that at all. But at least there is a component of the media system that is dedicated towards public service. So think about you growing up in the United States, going through these TV channels, click, click, click on the remote. How long before you get to a public service medium? And when you do, PBS, is it one you're going to stop on? Or is it, okay, I did that as a kid. I watched Sesame Street. And I might come back to it when I'm older and watch one of those shows that my parents used to watch. Or maybe I'll listen to NPR when I'm going into the city. Okay, I'm making fun of it in a way, but there is some truth to the fact that we're not that interested in public service media. Most people are not, unless you're in education, which a lot of people around the university setting are. But most people, they just want flat out entertainment. They want that product. The irony is people watching, people reading on the internet, people listening on radio, they are the product. The audience is the product. The audience is what is being sold to the advertiser. So this is rather eye-opening when you compare those two overall philosophies and how media take root in countries that are predominantly one philosophy or another is something to consider. It also has implications for content, which are the final two areas that I want to discuss in our instructor video today. One of the areas of content is violence. We didn't really get into it in this class that much, but I do feel it's important to talk about how there is an inverse relationship between violence and media when you compare the United States with a lot of other countries. And here's what I mean by that. The US has certain rules about violence where we will or will not show graphic violence. For example, in real life violence, on TV news, somebody gets shot, or if somebody has a fight outside of a bar, somebody's killed, somebody's beat up, somebody ends up in the hospital, we don't show that. Soldier comes back from war, we don't show that. Now, we have lots of reasons for it, respect in that particular case right there, honor, dignity, but the fact is we don't show it, right? However, in our fiction programs, CSI, for example, almost any crime drama, lots of movies that are aired on TV, we just have flat out, we have blood, we have people losing body parts, people being blown up, knives going through people's hearts. No problem to show that kind of violence. The thinking is, if it's fiction, it's acceptable. If it's reality, and especially on the news when people are eating dinner in their homes, that's inappropriate. The inverse relationship is that in countries that again have a more social responsibility perspective and less capitalistic perspective, making media content always a product, you do have the opposite. You have people coming home from war being shown injured with bloodied legs and gashes. The thinking there is we need to tell the reality of what war really is. The opposite is true as well, that in fiction programs there is a restraint. It's often codified in the regulations of these countries, a restraint on how graphic the violence can be. The codes will actually say no sounds of crunching bones, for example. That's not allowed. So there's an interesting area of content as it differs around the world. Now, there are plenty of other countries that have the same kind of violent content that the US does, Japan being one of them. So I'm not meaning to exclusively single out the US, but I'm wanting to draw the attention more to the differences in violence. And then the last area of content, it's a whole area that you could teach a whole class on. I've done a lot of research in it myself in my early years as an assistant professor. It has to do with obscenity, /sexuality, /profanity. Those three things together In the US, we generally perceive that if we have any kind of sexuality on broadcasting, and if we have any kind of profanity in newspapers, it's considered to be indecent, immoral, dirty, unsavory, and possibly damaging to minors, corrupting of minors. So we have these laws in place, especially with broadcasters. One violation of that law, say fuck on a radio show, you could be subjected to a $324,000 fine. Other countries take a different approach. Even those countries that have a social responsibility perspective. Often what those countries do is they say, you know, nudity is part of life. Sexuality is part of life. If we're going to have a scene on a TV drama where a husband and wife or a boyfriend and girlfriend of age are going to make love, we have to portray it realistically. Now, we're not going to show quote-unquote penetration. Yeah, that word is actually, again, codified in regulations about media, especially in Europe. But we are going to show breasts. We're going to show buttocks. France, they'll show a male's penis on television if it's not the front center stage of the plot. And so there's just a complete different opposite view of sexuality, indecency, profanity in media systems around the world compared with the US. Now, I'm not saying the US is really, really conservative either. If you go to many Arabic countries, you're not going to find even the female body in terms of a face being shown. And certainly no profanity. No drinking depicted either. So I'm just trying to provide a final experience in my instructor video that captures many of the things that you may not have been aware of that are endemic to your growing up as an American by virtue of the media content that you access. Or perhaps you've discovered many of those things on your own as you've gone through this class and been studying the country that you've been studying. Or perhaps you've traveled and had the opportunity to have these kinds of awakenings firsthand. Regardless, I hope you're all set today for your RSC post, your final RSC post. Choosing those two columns is key, and your material that you'll be applying today will be exclusively from this video. There are no chapter readings. Have a great day.